Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating. We're taking a close look at recent research analyzing how an ancient Hellenistic philosophy is actively being used right now as a highly practical, evidence-based toolkit for surviving our modern emotional chaos. It's honestly mind-blowing to see how ancient ideas from well over 2 millennia ago map perfectly onto modern psychology. Right off the bat, we've got to address the elephant in the room. When you hear the word Stoic, what immediately comes to mind? For a lot of us, it's that widespread but totally false stereotype of the unfeeling, emotionless robot with a stiff upper lip. You know, the guy who never cries, never laughs, and just quietly endures pain. Well, as we unpack the source material today, we are going to completely shatter that myth. So, here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The modern Stoic revival. 2. Decoding true Stoicism. 3. The ancient roots of modern therapy. 4. Your Stoic emotional toolkit. And 5. We ask the data, does it actually work?
Okay, let's jump straight into section 1, the modern Stoic revival. Let's be real, modern life is pretty much defined by high stress, pervasive anxiety, crazy information overload, and deep emotional volatility. And the research tells us that this ancient philosophy is experiencing a massive revival precisely because people are just desperate for robust, reliable frameworks to handle this exact landscape. We are constantly bombarded with stimuli, right? And Stoicism actually offers a tangible way to build inner resilience and navigate all of this complexity without losing our minds.
Moving right along to section 2, decoding true Stoicism.
So the crucial piece of the puzzle here is understanding an ancient Greek concept called apatheia. Now, I know it sounds a lot like our modern word apathy, but they are totally different things. Apatheia is definitely not emotional numbness or suppression. It actually means freedom from irrational, destructive passions. The Stoics fundamentally believed that destructive emotions, like intense, blinding rage or paralyzing fear, are actually the result of errors in our own judgment. Therefore, apatheia is a state of psychological tranquility and resilience that you achieve through rational thought. You're essentially transforming destructive emotions rather than just bottling them up.
And this brings us to the absolute foundation of it all, the dichotomy of control. It's elegantly simple. There are things entirely in our control, like our judgments, our intentions, desires, and actions. And then there are things completely outside our control, external events, the weather, the past, and of course, the opinions and actions of others. The whole secret here is directing our mental energy strictly toward what we can actually influence and practicing radical acceptance of literally everything else.
Which leads us perfectly into section 3, the ancient roots of modern therapy.
Listen to this incredible quote from the philosopher Epictetus. He said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them." Now, what's wild about this ancient maxim is that it is the exact foundational blueprint for modern cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. The pioneers of modern therapy openly acknowledged that their central tenet, this idea that emotional disturbances stem primarily from our own maladaptive thoughts and beliefs rather than the external events themselves, was pulled directly from Stoic philosophy.
In fact, it's literally a direct lineage. Ancient philosophical terms map flawlessly onto the clinical vocabulary used in today's evidence-based therapies, like CBT and acceptance and commitment therapy. Think about it. The ancient Stoic goal of living with virtue is exactly what modern therapists call acting according to your values and goals. The Stoic use of reason, that's cognitive appraisal. Those destructive passions are what clinicians call emotion dysregulation. And that dichotomy of control we just talked about is the clinical concept of locus of control and acceptance. We've really just updated the terminology of a 2,000-year-old psychological science.
All right, let's get practical. Section 4, your Stoic emotional toolkit.
First tool out of the box, premeditatio malorum, or negative visualization. This involves deliberately contemplating potential future misfortunes, like, say, losing a job or facing an illness. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds completely pessimistic, right? But the research shows it's exactly the opposite. It actually acts as a psychological inoculation, significantly reducing the shock if bad things do happen. It builds resilience because you're mentally rehearsing your coping strategies in advance. And wonderfully, it paradoxically enhances your gratitude for the present moment because you suddenly deeply appreciate exactly what you have right now.
Tool number 2 is the cognitive distancing process. This is a real game changer when you're dealing with sudden anger or workplace frustration. Step 1 is simply noticing a troubling emotional impression. Step 2 is recognizing it as just a mental event, a hypothesis, not objective reality. Step 3 is the big one. You pause. This prevents that automatic impulsive reaction. Seneca, a famous Stoic, actually noted that the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Finally, step 4 is evaluating the thought rationally using that dichotomy of control. Following these steps basically buys your rational brain the crucial seconds it needs to take over from your impulsive emotions.
Then we have what's called the view from above. Imagine, for a second, floating up and viewing yourself and your current situation from progressively greater heights. First, you're above your house, then your town, the earth, and finally, way out into the vast cosmos. This spatial visualization profoundly shrinks our daily anxieties by placing our personal problems within the staggering context of time and space. It forces this cognitive shift that automatically diminishes the perceived catastrophic importance of whatever is currently stressing you out.
Now, this toolkit even handles the heaviest emotions like grief, and this is vital. Stoics absolutely do not suppress grief. Suppressing it is terrible for you. Instead, they manage it virtuously. They accept loss as part of the natural universal order, rather than fighting reality. They shift their focus toward intense gratitude for the time they were able to share with the person or thing they lost. They seek meaning within the hardship and constantly remind themselves of the impermanent nature of everything. This ensures that while the sorrow is genuinely felt, it doesn't become utterly overwhelming or paralyzing.
Which brings us to our final section, number 5, does it actually work?
Well, the short answer is absolutely yes. In recent empirical pilot studies called the Stoic Mindfulness and Resilience Training, or SMRT for short, participants were trained in these exact techniques, and the results were stunning. Participants reported up to a massive 27% increase in their overall life satisfaction. The data shows a massive dual effect from those pilot studies. We're talking about a 23% drop in negative emotions, alongside a 17% increase in flourishing and a 16% increase in positive emotions. So this proves that actively engaging with Stoic techniques doesn't numb you out at all. Instead, it acts as a highly flexible toolkit for self-regulation that simultaneously drives down the negative stuff, like sadness, while significantly boosting positive flourishing. It's an active upward psychological trajectory.
But,
And this is a huge but, the research strongly warns against what we call fake Stoicism. When Stoicism is misunderstood as that toxic cultural stereotype we mentioned earlier, the strict emotional suppression, the extreme self-reliance, the whole stiff upper lip mentality, it actually becomes really dangerous. Data shows that people who score high on this fake Stoicism experience much lower well-being. And even more alarmingly, this fake Stoicism is linked to significant delays in seeking professional medical or psychological help. True Stoicism is about rational regulation, absolutely not bottling things up until you inevitably break.
So I want to leave you with this to really challenge what you thought you knew about emotional resilience. Ask yourself, is true mental strength really about just enduring pain in silence? Or is it having the wisdom to deeply examine our own judgments, accept what we can't control, and actively ask for help when we actually need it? True Stoicism isn't about feeling nothing. It's about navigating everything with reason and virtue. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope you can take some of these tools and put them to work in your everyday life.